My name is Lex, and this is Bronx. We bought and renovated this Airstream and this camper, this tiny home, then this Airstream, then another Airstream, and finally we designed and built this tiny home. And now I'm on a mission to learn about the best travel experiences across the world. Welcome to Experiential Travel.
It's so funny because I still don't know what to call like the people I have on the show because it's like, or on the podcast, because you guys are technically guests for me, but you're hosts for the thing. Right. So I don't know if to call you guys hosts or guests. It's so funny.
So guest hosts.
Yeah, they're guest hosts.
But then they might think that you're not the normal guy.
I know, right? So we'll just start off with today's guest hosts are incredible hosts, and I can't wait to have them as guests on our show.
There you go.
They have 16 different units, ranging from a treehouse to a castle, and I still can't believe they own a castle. It's probably an unbelievable, surreal thought for them to actually own a castle. That's amazing. In northern Washington, north of Seattle, so I'm guessing they have a bunch of tourism from Canada as well. I'm going to ask all about questions regarding that. And then I am so excited to have the owners of Travel Experience Lodging, Hans and Bev Bailey. Thanks for joining the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so this is actually round two. We had a little bit of some technical difficulties on round one, but I am so excited to have them back on. I first want to ask the show. We call it experiential travel because that's what I think we're offering, right? We're offering not a place just to sleep at night, but it's a place to disconnect or to reconnect. It's a place to really experience things. Why do you? I love the synergy that we have with the podcast name and then you guys' name. When I saw your guys' name, I was just like, immediately was like, oh, we need to have them on the show. How did you guys get Travel Experience Lodging?
Well, it's kind of a long, cumbersome name, so we're told. We shorten it down to TEL. However, we found that when we vacation, that we really wanted to enjoy not just the sights that we would leave our abode, if you will, to go and see, but we wanted to come back to an experience as well. We wanted to have, and when we go to an area, we want to experience not just the sights and the restaurants and the tourist things that you normally do, but we wanted to live like the people live in that area. I've traveled around the world, and when I go around the world, I hate staying in hotels because I kind of feel like I'm leaving America and then going out into these places and then just coming back to what I can experience at home. So we tried to make our places reflect where they're coming to, and so we call ourselves Travel Experience Lodging, and then sometimes we'll connect the P&W, Pacific Northwest, to let people know that we're trying to give them the greatest Pacific Northwest experience they can have.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
Sorry.
And another part of that is when I'm in, I don't know, I'll actually start where it kind of came from. We were on mission trips in Mexico, and I would walk around this little town, and it was an amazing little town, on the water and beautiful views. And, and I know they don't have much money, but, there's 10 people or more living in a little space. And I just wondered, they have at least the beauty outside, they could just do a little bit to be able to experience and have enjoyment outside and be able to see their view and just make areas outside that would just help their lifestyle so much more, and when I started thinking of that, I came home and started implementing that in our own house, And then when I implemented it in our own house, which transformed our way of living, because you're in your house all the time,
Yeah.
why not make it a place that really gives you life and not just a place where you live? And so in our places that we make, I want to give that to people where everywhere they go, inside and hopefully outside also, that they have an experience and really live in every part of the house in a different way than they might probably not at their own home. So
Yeah, I think that people hear the word like the Airbnb bust and like how you can't make a profit off of Airbnb, but I think the transition of what's occurring on Airbnb / like just short-term rentals in general there's a transition from like the urban renting out your home as a short-term rental into creating these experiences that hotels can't really do, because the job of a hotel is to maximize the number of keys or doors you can have in the property that you have. So it's to put 16, 25, 30 rooms in a building in order to maximize revenue, right? And when you're in a commercial building, it's their entire business model is how many occupancies how can we increase occupancy year round, but on a nightly basis, the most amount of heads in our building, right? And they generate, they operate off of their NOI, where we as more, it's a mixture of it's like that. It's the middle part between a commercial hotel and a residential urban property. And we're kind of marrying the two and putting a residential property, but that commercial atmosphere of trying to increase occupancy rates. So, but then we do that by creating that experience. And I think that where I see a lot of people go wrong is when they don't focus on the actual experience aspect of it. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing, right? We're offering a place anyone can. If you just want a bed to sleep in, people will book hotels. The reason why they're coming to your properties is because the experience that they have during the day, they can continue during the night at your property. And it's the vacation doesn't end after they go on the hike, after they go see the waterfall, after they go do whatever they go to the restaurant. The vacation and the experience continues because of the property. And I think that's the slight difference that our short-term rental industry is moving to. And you guys are in the pivotal, and you guys are in the driver's seat, it looks like, for that. And that's awesome.
We've like our prices are generally twice what everybody around us is. Like, so we charge a lot more. Our houses just have that uniqueness, and that's why we charge that much. And it seems as if people are willing to pay for that experience because they could get something that's adequate, with a bed and a kitchen and whatever for probably half as much, but we're booked more than they are. And if I might, we were talking about how we started things. One of the other elements that helped us come to this place was we built the first house that we built on the property. Okay, so we bought a piece of property. We built the little tree house while we were simultaneously building a small house that I was going to retire in. And
well, yes. So I know this because we kind of talked a little bit, but just so that we fill in all of the listeners real quick, let's bring it back to the beginning on how you guys got into your first property of that first treehouse.
Sure, and we'll try to guide it into showing how we call it stumbling upon what we've done, because we didn't plan this. This wasn't a business plan, but all of a sudden we found ourselves in the midst of doing something that people wanted to join in with.
And I'll tell you just real quick right there.
Yeah.
that is a reoccurring theme with every single guest that we have on this podcast. They all start it because they want a second house for their family to vacation in. They want an asset for their kids. They want it's all not starting it with the idea of I want to go into this making a lot of money.
Right.
It's all external features, external circumstances that make them start, and then the cherry on top of the sundae is the financial benefit. But I have found that the people that start off with external reasons actually make more money than the people that are trying to maximize revenue.
Yep. Yeah, and as a matter of fact, half of the properties we own, and then half of the properties we manage for my wife's dad, and he's been a contractor all his life. And there's always a constant struggle between us and him because he wants to maximize how much he spends versus, basically how much he spends. He's great at saving money, but we're constantly telling him, oh, you can't look at it like that. You've got to understand that these people want an experience, and you can't do that by doing everything as cheap as you can. Unless you've got some amazing experience that you can create that way, which, we have in the past, but generally it doesn't work that way. And so we totally get that. Most people are just wanting to buy a house and they see what we make, and then they think, oh, well, I'll just throw that on Airbnb, but they don't understand that it's because of our care and attention and that we do make what we make, and people don't want a hotel experience.
Absolutely.
So anyway, so how we got into it was we really had some neighbors from hell. Had some horrible neighbors that
like most
we were
people
just,
do.
Oh man, it was brutal. They were accusing us of things and calling the cops. It was really a surreal experience. And so we wanted to get away from them. And our kids were finally starting to fly the coop. And so we decided, hey, let's start looking around and seeing what we can afford, seeing what we get. We just want to get away from these neighbors. We wanted to sell our house that we had built a long time ago and maybe scale down and, all that kind of stuff. So we called our realtor and we said, hey, we're just trying to look for land right now. We'd like to build again. And so he gave us a call back and he said, oh, there's this place down we're by actually a surf spot that's called Greenpoint. And he said, hey, there's a piece of property down there. Are you interested? And I surf. And so I'm like, oh, yes, of course. And so we came out and there's 8 properties where we're at that were for sale. And they were just going on the market. And they're all on a bluff. It's about a 120-foot drop down to the water. But they have these amazing water views. And this happened right in 2008. And we came on the property and we immediately saw the first piece that we came to, and it was kind of a surreal experience. My wife and I, we've made a few good decisions in our lives, and we just know, and we came on this piece of property, and it wasn't the level piece of property
that everybody else buys.
Right. So there's a whole bunch of other properties that have the same view, but they're all level. But we saw this property and it had some hills and some dips and, something that most people wouldn't buy because they're like, oh, I don't want to deal with hills and all the terrain. But we saw it as beauty. And we're like, oh, well, we can live around that. We can make that into something that's not normal. And so again, we weren't thinking of Airbnb. We're just like, oh, no, we want to live on this piece because it's unique, it's different, it's something that we want to look at, all the time. And so we bought that piece of property. We the property, as I said, overlooks the Strait of Juan de Fuca, And so simultaneously, we built a treehouse, just a little tiny thing to begin with, not more than 120 square feet, just up in the trees. And then while we were also
Now, why a
building
treehouse? I feel like when parents are like, "Hey, I want to build an ADU for my kid so that he stays in."
'Cause we do things differently.
Treehouse isn't like the first idea that people
Right.
stumble upon.
Right, right, and that's a good question because that's how we think. Like we didn't want,
I love that.
you know, we want because we wanted to get as close. So what we wanted to do, because we wanted to get people as close to the water as we possibly could, ourselves included. You know, we at the time thought, oh, we're just going to go up there and utilize it and kind of have date nights up there, or you know, if we have company, we'll invite them and they can stay in the treehouse, and we wanted it to be as close to the bluff as we could, so they just felt like they were right there in the water. But that's how we think, right? You know, and so again, you know, when I say we fell into this, most people wouldn't build a treehouse. Oh, and the other thing is I, you know, wanted to impact the area as little as I could. And I thought, oh, well, I don't have to put anything in the ground. I can just go, because I looked into the, you know, if it killed the trees or if it harmed the trees, and you know, they said, no, it doesn't harm the tree. You just, you know, drill a hole and it heals itself and whatnot. And so I thought,
Beautiful.
little impact on environment, high impact on beauty, and kind of a wow factor. I thought, well, that's what I want to do. And so that's how we made the decision for the tree house.
Now, when you build, I mean, I wouldn't know I understand the general concept of construction. I don't know the general concept of building a treehouse. Did you get plans or like contact anyone, or was it just like how did you learn to start this treehouse, construction wise?
Well, we knew a guy that isn't afraid of doing anything. And
I love that.
and so he had helped us with the house, and he's just like, oh yeah, I can do that. And so we, you know, found the trees we wanted to connect with. And as he was doing it, you know, the plan just came about because we had, you know, there was no plan to it, because we actually went to the county and asked, oh, you know, can we get a permit for this? And they said, we have no, you know, codes or anything for a treehouse, so just don't tell us, wink, wink. And so we didn't, even though they saw it being built the same time as our house. But, you know, that came to bite us afterwards, because after our kid moved out of the treehouse, you know, at that moment, my husband was actually talking about retiring. And, you know, he had been a pastor for 20 years, not making enough to get by. And, and I just told him he can't ever retire. You know, I had been home with the kids, you know, my whole life, and homeschooling, so I never worked. And, you know, and when he told me he wanted to retire, at that point, I was just like, you can't do that. And I kind of got mad at God, because we were, you know, I was never complained, you know, about what he made and whatever. I clipped every coupon and, you know, never went into debt. We were just really good at, you know, never going out to eat, never doing anything, you know, but, you know, we had everything we needed. Mm-hmm. And at that point, when I kind of got mad at God and just said, what are you going to do? At that point, I realized we had this tree house out here. I had heard some friends of ours had, you know, rented a room in their house, and they were doing really good with Airbnb. So I'm just like, okay, let's try. And within 2 weeks, we had the whole summer totally booked. And so at that point, I'm just like, okay, I guess you can retire now, because I'm going to make more money than you. And so we started this with that treehouse. But then after 2 months, then the county came and red flagged us and said, oh, you have to tear this down. And so then we're just like, no, this is our retirement. We're going to make this work. So we fought with them the county for the next year. And of course, we had no money still. And so the house we were living in, which is up on the hill, which is now an Airbnb, we moved out of it and started renting that as an Airbnb so we could pay for the treehouse and fight with the county. And $10,000 later, fighting with the county,
$20,000
maybe 20,
before we set foot.
we finally were able to build the second part of the treehouse because they wanted to have a full kitchen and a full bathroom on the level, on the same level. And so we had to build onto it, which that side is about 600 square feet. And, and so we built that, and in those next 5 years, we ended up buying the castle. My dad ended up, we have 6 cabins on the water, and those are ones that I had always noticed. I'm just like, oh, those are so amazing. And those finally came up for sale, and I saw what they were making. I'm just like, Dad, I can make 3 times the amount that these little cabins are making right now. And so he bought those. We remodeled them and, and made 3 to 4 times more than the previous owners. And, and so that's kind of how we've moved 6 times in those 5 years. We'd move into one, remodel, get it ready. We'd move to the next one and lived in the little tree house while it was being built with no water, no bathroom, no kitchen for 6 months.
Got COVID.
but it was a lot of work for 5 years.
That's one way to rekindle a marriage.
Right.
Yeah.
Or
with your
destroy it.
Yeah, and 150 square feet. It was
150 square feet with no bathroom or shower.
Yeah.
That's
But
that'll do it.
Since we're talking to hosts, let me just briefly go back. The first house that we were able, so once we saw the potential of what could be, we're like, oh, I wonder if our house will rent, because the house that we had built, it was just basically a garage with a house above the garage, but it was an amazing place. I called it the demotivational house, because every time I walked into it, I just wanted to sit and enjoy it.
We always felt we were on vacation.
Yeah, it felt like a vacation. And I was like, man, this house is not interesting enough. We didn't build it for enough. It's not. And it really amazed us at how much we loved the house. And so one day I was like, why? Why is it so much like this? Because again, we didn't have a plan, and we didn't have money at that time to build it.
Everything was repurposed inside.
Yeah. We went to repurpose, warehouses, and so it's not like we threw a bunch of money into that house. And one day I was looking at the house and I was thinking about this and kind of conversing with God and just saying, man, why is this so amazing? And what I realized is everywhere we looked in the house, there's only 900 square feet in the level that we lived on. And everywhere where I looked in the house, either there was a beautiful view or the house was interesting. There was no just sheetrock wall. We put wood in everything. We had repurposed shelves that I had bought. They weren't shelves to begin with, but I made them into shelves, because I didn't have money to buy shelves and I wasn't going to spend that. But
the lights were jars.
Yeah, the lights were just jars. I would hang a wire and put a jar and a light in it, and then we,
I love that.
and so, yeah, it really turned out. But again, what we realized also after we built it is there's no synthetic materials. Like, we don't have carpet, we don't have drywall. Wood is wood. And we don't paint it. We don't paint it white. Dear Lord, quit painting your wood white. We don't paint it white. We had in-floor heating, and that was just concrete. So we just polished the concrete. I didn't hide all the brackets that were on the wood. We just made this place that, again, we just kind of fell into it. And so, to where there's no synthetic. It's a very interesting house. Every time people would come in, they'd be like, wow, this is amazing. And it was amazing because it shouldn't have been amazing. And so we realized, oh, this is something. And so then when we started renting it, other people came in because, as you know, for a good, successful Airbnb, first of all, you have to have good pictures. Then second of all, you have to have great ratings. Those two things have to go together. And when people came to our house, we would frequently get, and we still do, the comment, oh, it's better than the pictures. And that is what really sells it. And it's because when they walk in, everything that you look at, and so that's kind of guided us from there on out, is we say, everywhere you look, there's got to be something interesting or beautiful. And if it's not, we've got to change it. And so we don't just make one place beautiful and then take that picture so it'll sell. Because then you're just walking into another place that, it might be nice and great, but it doesn't command the attention and the financial impact that ours does. And so, it started there. Again, it didn't start with us thinking about that. We stumbled into it, and then we saw the reviews, and we saw what people liked, and we started understanding our clientele, and we're like, oh, this. Because another thing that we saw was that people would go. They would come onto our property, and they would go to all the Instagram places to take their picture. Right? So if we had a hammock out, they would get in the hammock, they would take their Instagram, and then they would get up and go to the next place. Right? And we're like, oh, they're not even going to enjoy that hammock. They just want a picture in that hammock. Right? And it's easy to be judgmental about that, but I was like, stop that. They're paying us money. I don't care. They hang out in the hammock. But what we realized is, now, if we can give them, when they go to bed, a bed that's a nicer experience than you can get in a hotel, or maybe they even get at their house, that is what brings them back, and that's what brings these reviews to where they're like, oh, it's more than just the pictures. And so again, that whole experience thing, we want them everywhere they go, whether it's a bathroom, because we don't put walls in our bathrooms. We basically just have shower heads in the ceiling, and then we make concrete floors, and we put the rainwater, because most people don't have a rainwater shower, and because it's an experience. It's a different thing than they usually get. And so that's why we call ourselves Travel Experience Lodging, is because they're traveling, they're experiencing the lodging as well as the outside and all the things they've come for. And so
that moment of switching, you're a pastor for 25 years, wanting to retire, have this beautiful treehouse. What if we throw it up on Airbnb? It books out for the entire summer. You guys spark. Ooh, maybe there's something there. County comes, shuts it down. What was that moment of switching from, okay, well, we have this extra property, this treehouse that we want to book out. What if we rent out this other home and live in the treehouse? I'd love to know more about that mindset shift, because that's a mindset shift, I think, of having a primary residence and then saying, you know what, we're giving up this home that we've been living in, and we're actually going to rent this out and live in the treehouse. That's a big conversation, especially if I'm doing it by myself, I have a conversation with myself, I agree with myself, great.
yeah.
When you have a partner, and you're in a marriage and have kids and have a home base, and then the idea of basically saying we're now going to let strangers into our home base, that's a mindset shift. What I would love to know more about that conversation you guys had with each other and how you guys maneuvered around that.
Well, we are very adventurous. We don't get scared of many things, and we're really laid back. And so a lot of our decisions we don't talk a whole lot about it. We just like, how hard can it be? And we just do it. I mean,
That's literally my brother
you-
and I's thing. It's like he was
Yeah,
asking me.
I mean-
We started really quickly. I love this bit.
Yeah.
We started I started a tiny home manufacturing company. He was like, "How do you build homes?" We're both have arts background. I go, Nick, close your eyes. Think about how you would build a home. That's how to do it. Because how hard can it be?
Right.
I
It's not
I
rocket
love that.
science.
I love that mentality. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it is a huge decision, and I would not, tell everybody to do it because it's a huge sacrifice. I mean, like I said, in the last 5 years, we've built 3 places, we've moved 6 times, we've remodeled 7 places, designed all 16, and so it was a lot of work, and you have to be very resilient and just kind of roll with it, because every day it seems like we had some conflict, some huge problems, and you have to be able to, I guess, I mean, your relationship has to be good to be able to get through that, because, I mean, yeah, it was a lot of stress, but yet we didn't have too many fights. I don't think, but, we were
not too
able
many.
to,
A bit.
yeah. But that whole decision of doing this, you have to be willing to sacrifice, because I see a lot of hosts, rent out even their ADU, and they're so attached to them and have so much memories or whatever that they take things personally when people, misuse something, or, just like, oh, they didn't respect my house. And it was my house, but I had to switch gears and realize this is my business. And, and so when people would throw up all over the floor, and we honestly haven't had too many of those, but when they did, it's just like, okay, we'll have to replace that. I'm not going to charge every customer new sheets because, they ruined them, or, extra cleaning. I've only charged one person extra cleaning because it was really gross. but that whole mind shift is huge.
Yeah. Well, and if I might say, my wife's pretty hardy. It's we look at life. The question that you asked is really what you see is 5 years after basically 30 years of us learning how to love each other, work with each other, have relationship building. We base our relationship on scriptural, ideas. And I'm not saying that you have to do that to be an Airbnb, but that is what allowed us to be able to weather the stress, because it was tremendously stressful, because I was still pastoring. I just started retiring this year. And so I was still pastoring through all of that. And we were building houses and creating a company, and we're not business people. So we were learning all these new things, but we knew we were doing it together. And we've always approached life as we're no longer 2 people, we're now 1 person, and we got to figure out how to bring that about. And so that's what gave us the ability, because you're right, the undertaking is large, and it can it really could ruin a marriage if you don't have the underpinnings to be able to support it. But with money, we're generally in agreement with design, we fight about, but we both respect each other enough to eventually come to a place to where I say, okay, that's your side, so you do it. I don't agree with that, but go ahead. This is mine. And so you're going to have to let me do this. And that was because we're also building a house that we're living in. And she had to oftentimes get real frustrated inside and have to let that go because she was making all the decisions in the business while I was making all the decisions about how our house was going to be built. And so, again, that's just a lot of stress that you've just got to have a strong marriage to be able to weather. And if you don't, you can do it not quite so severely, right? There's ways we could have approached this in a much slower, more methodical and less stressful way. But we, again, like my wife said, we're not afraid to do things.
That just ain't your speed.
Yeah. And I was just like, okay, we see what we can do and we're going to do it. And we just go for it and we're like, okay, it's not that hard. We can do it again. It just means we're going to have to work more. We can do that.
Yeah.
And then, and so we just kept on doing that.
I was talking to another guest about this concept, and it doesn't really pertain to people that buy homes, but more people that do ground up constructions. And since you guys have built a bunch of homes, the major question is, where I'm at right now, ideology wise, is that it's important to choose. Going back to you were talking about working with your father, Bev, as the investor, and how he wants to cut costs and how it's important to then also spend money. I think that there's a give and take there, and I think that there are things that you need to spend money on, and then there are definitely things that you cannot spend money on because that they're going to get damaged. For example, for us, we refuse to budget cut when it comes to windows and doors. We just because that's our entire business model. I love natural light. We'll spend. I mean, our tiny homes on wheels. It's $15,000 window and door package on a 400 square on a 288 square foot home. So it's like majority windows. That's something that I refuse to budget cut on. However, when it comes to a bed frame, or when it comes, a bed frame's not a bad example, but when it comes to pots and pans, for example, we just do Walmart pots and pans because we know every 4 to 6 months we're replacing those things regardless of quality. They could be a $500 set of pots and pans. They're going to be replaced every 4 to 6 months. They could be $100 pots and pans. They're going to be replaced every 4 to 6 months.
Totally.
When you were doing your ground up constructions, Hans, you were basically saying that there's a give and take with you and Bev that you guys have when it comes to each person's role. I'd love to give a little bit more insight, being a master at ground up constructions that you guys are, what you're willing to spend money on and budget with, and then what you're willing to say, hey, let's actually go a little bit cheaper here, or let's go more cost effective at this part. Could you kind of walk me through kind of what you choose?
So first of all, my budget, right? So when we built the first house, which does very well, we just didn't have the money. So like my wife said, we went to these places that repurpose stuff. And so I would just take a trailer. We'd walk into these warehouses. We say, okay, it costs time to save money. So we had more time than money. So my wife would go and say, oh, doors cost this much, windows cost this much, and da-da-da-da-da. We go to the repurposing place. When we didn't have money, we said, oh, we can save this much on this door. Oh, I don't want to pay somebody to build shelving units. I can just take these things that were $30 a piece that look amazing, but I can take that and I can put that in this. And so when we didn't have money, we just had to spend time shopping, finding something, because we wouldn't compromise on the look of it. So we had to have something interesting and unique, but we didn't have to pay for it. Now, after we started making more money, I realized, if I spend more money on experience, the experiential aspect of people staying in my places, I can make more money. And that
Give
was
me an example
never
of one of those experiences that you would spend more money on.
right. So when you come into the treehouse, which is kind of our engine that runs everything in the business. It's all wood that I have milled on my property. We had a bunch of trees that were down, and I didn't want to just burn them, and people wouldn't come in and mill them. And so again, I thought, how hard can it be? And so I bought an inexpensive sawmill that would take up to a 30-inch log, and I said, I can learn this. And so I set it up, and we started milling stuff. But what I realized is, this costs a lot of time. And so I make this board, but then I have to have other people sand it and stain it and treat it. Whereas I could have went and bought wood that was probably less because of the manpower. Mm-hmm. Like I was getting free wood essentially, but then to pay everybody to get it ready. And so then I had this opportunity cost. I had to say, so should I just go buy stuff? But then what I realized is, no, I'm going to be paying about maybe $5,000 or $10,000 more to have these guys, treat this wood that I'm milling up. But people, when they come into the treehouse, they don't know, but there's something in their subconscious that knows this is not store. This is not Home Depot wood. This is, that you're in somewhere that you could never be anywhere else, because it's wood off this property, and I bring the grain out as much as I can as I treat it, and so it's all kinds of different wood, and we pair that stuff together, which costs a little bit of money, but in my head, I'm going through, what's the experience though? When people come in, I think we just had an architect walk through the house and the tree house and stuff, and places just yesterday, and they were amazed, right? Mm. But I'm not that, I'm not that handy. I'm not that, bright. I'm not that.
I would say the contrary, but continue.
It's nice of you, but because of those things, right? And I've been able to say, okay, this will cost more, but the experience is worth it, right? So I'm constantly walking into every room as it's being built, or she is as it's being curated. And we're saying, okay, because we're ready to change on a dime. Because there's been some times when we've walked into a room and said, nope, that window's got to go. Or, we need more light in here. We got to put a window. And we realize that it's going to cost us money. Like, as I've contracted, I'm like, that's going to cost me a lot of money. They got to go back and redo this, and the other thing. And they're going to be irritated at me because I'm making them redo things. Yeah. But in the end, I need the product that I can envision that will make people really enjoy themselves, and come into a place and say, this is amazing, and so that's kind of the process.
The treehouse, one of the rooms that we had to make major decisions on is the bathroom. So we didn't want to make a treehouse bathroom normal. And so the sink is made out of a stump that we, made into a sink, and the counter is part of that stump, which is amazing. The shower is a rainfall shower, but we put a branch up there so it looks like it's actually coming out of a tree. The whole shower, or the bathroom, is a shower, so we have the shower in one corner, the toilet in one corner. But then we were in there, and he is, you look out the door and you can see the water. And he's just like, we need to make this open so they can take a shower and look at the water. And I'm just like, well, there might be other people here. We have to get a door on here. And so we ended up, having our contractor make a sliding door so it can be totally open, that they can take a shower and look at the water at the same time. Or if there's more people, they can shut it. but that's kind of one of the examples of where we had to look at that, even that little room, and make every part of it an experience.
Yeah,
The
intentional.
kitchen
I
was
mean, it
kind of the
sounds
same thing.
very intentional. Like you see a room
Mm-hmm.
and you have what you want for yourself for it to operate, and then
Yep.
you know exactly how, if you're gonna like it, it's gonna translate into the guest. And I think that's amazing. I didn't mean to cut you off. But continue.
What I found is I love beautiful things. That's why I married my wife. I love beautiful things.
That's a
And
right answer.
Yeah, right. I won't get anything from it, but I'm just trying. But I love beautiful things, and I'm like, why would I deny myself just looking at this for a couple $100? I mean, why buy a door that's always going to be shut when I can have a barn door that I can slide out, I can take a shower and look at an amazing, view, and even the floor is made out of the slate, So I was trying to make people feel like they're in the woods as much as we possibly could when they're in the treehouse.
Yeah.
So
And then in the kitchen, we hate things normal. Our kids' names are all very unique. Everything we do, we just hate doing anything normal. And, and so in the kitchen, I didn't want a towel rack. I didn't want a wine rack that I go buy. And so Pinterest was actually, I spent every night looking through Pinterest for ideas, trying to figure out, and so the towel rack is some little branch off one of the trees here that, came out and that we hold the towels on.
I love that.
The wine rack is a piece of wood that we found and put screws in that we can hang the cups
Coffee
from.
mugs,
Everything from. So nothing in there really came from a store. Even our lights, I had a hard time because I didn't want Home Depot lights, so I went online and I found lights that have elk or deer as the outside, so every part in there had to be unique.
yeah, it has and I would also say one of the biggest things and probably one of the most important things is, like, when she mentions that she was on Pinterest all the time, we're not afraid of other people's ideas. Like, these places, if I have a nail boy, that's what I used to call myself because everybody else was more valuable than me building things. But if I have some guy who's just sweeping the floors, but he says, why don't you do it this way? I will stop and I'll look at it and I'll think, oh, that might be a better idea than mine. And because the end result is I want the best possible atmosphere that I can create. And oftentimes that doesn't come from my head. It comes from a collaboration, or a lot of times it doesn't come from me at all. And I'm just having to rely on other people, but I don't have to get my way. I just have to have the vision and be able to recognize, oh yes, your idea is better than mine. Let's do that. And that is probably as important because every time as I'm in construction and as we're creating, I create the backdrops, right? I create the walls, the floors, everything, and then she comes in and she makes it beautiful. I make very masculine surroundings and architecture, and then what she does is she comes in and brings this beautiful femininity to it, that
You
that
build
will
the house,
complement.
she creates the home.
Yeah, exactly. And we try to work with each other. But sometimes she would come in and say, well, I don't like that. And then I'd immediately like, oh, who are that? This is my job. And then I'd have to talk myself back, say, well, no, wait a minute. Look at it. Maybe it is better, Or one of the workers, they'd be like, oh, no, we don't want to do it that way. We want to do it. And I'll be like, oh, well, if it's easier, yeah, that's fine. Or, no, I really need it this. I know it's going to cost me money.
But I
and
think
so,
there's a give and take there, because we have found that we'll take a lot of suggestions from people when it comes to how to improve the property, how to make things more convenient for the guests, how to make things just a better experience. But there are hills that we die on, and it's I literally have a section in the podcast called "Hills We Die On" because I do think that there are things that are non-negotiable for me. Like, for example, we don't put a curtain in the loft in one of our tiny homes because we have a loft and it is a full glass window, and we don't put a curtain on it. One, because it's like a weird window and it's hard to put a curtain there, and two, just because I like waking up with the sun. I think it's healthy to wake up with the sun. I love the idea of going to sleep with the sun and waking up with the sun. That's like my thing, and it's something that I won't budge on. And we get all the time, hey, a phenomenal experience, we loved it, we would just love a curtain in there, could you add one? And it's like, when we say no, just like we are
We've
hard
done the same
and
thing.
fast and firm on not compromising that.
Right.
You were just basically talking about how you're able to take suggestion. I'd love to know a couple things that you're willing to work with other people, but then the hills that you do die on, what are some examples of that as well?
Man, that's a good question. I don't have any fresh examples. But when I'm with my workers, I have been a workman, more blue collar in the past. So I understand the frustration with somebody who just wants something when I could do it with a lot less work and accomplish basically the same task that they want done. And so I want my workers to be happy with what they're doing. And so if they can accomplish, I guess my goal is the important thing. For instance, the goal would be this room needs to take advantage of this view. And so I have my ideas. Okay, I want a window here, there, and in this place. Now, a worker may come in and say, no, that's hard because if we put it here, we're going to have to, structurally it won't work. Or
you have to put like a
we'll
double king stud there, and it's just, you don't have enough space to do it.
Right. Or we'll have to take this out. So it's going to cost you a day of work. Or it's going to, and then they'll say, but if we do it this way, and then what I'll do is the goal is still there. The view's got to be the king of this room. If their idea will make it and they're into that, I'll always go with them. I'll say, okay, yeah, do it that way. I don't care. That's fine. That looks good to me as long as the goal is accomplished.
Sailing to the destination is fixed, and we will not compromise on the type of boat you get to there can be malleable.
Yep. Exactly. And how fast that boat gets there or how slow will depend on my ability to weather that storm, right? So I might say, no, I need a faster boat. I know it's going to cost me. Or, no, we can take a leisurely way around. So let's do it that way.
One of the examples, I guess it was our personal home, but we had an architect, finally get our house done, and we had to get it into the county quick, so I couldn't make any more changes. And so they were starting to do the walls and stuff, and they put up the walls for the bathroom, and I'm just like, oh, I hate square walls. And, and they were little boxes. Here's a little box for the toilet. Here's a little box for the shower. And I'm just like, nope. And so I'm just like, I need you to tear those down and make them angles. And of course, a builder never wants to hear that you want an angled wall. But, that was just something I knew I did not want, just a normal square little boxes in my bathroom. And we ended up having them tear down the wall to make it angled because, we just don't like it normal.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, we're going to live here for years and years and years. We can pay $1,000 more and still have years of being able to enjoy where we're at rather than be like every time we walk in and think, why did we do that?
Because it would be the same if we were building an Airbnb. It would have been much easier to do a square room for a bathroom, but we knew that somebody going into that bathroom normally it would just be a bathroom and they'd go and whatever. But if they walked into this bathroom with it angled and, unique shapes and stuff, they would actually think, wow, this is an experience, even though it's just the bathroom. Our first house that we moved out of, that was the same thing. There was 2 bedrooms downstairs, too small to even be called a bedroom. The county is just like, that's not a bedroom. But we made them small, but because they were small, if they were just rectangles, they would have been boring. And so again, I put 2 angles into the room, which made it not as functional putting beds in and stuff, but it made the room very unique, even though, they're too small to even be considered a bedroom. But people love the bedrooms because they're not rectangles.
Yeah. At your guys' level, there is an interesting game, I guess, that y'all have to play now, and it's the game of maintaining and keeping the organization flowing and operating, and then expansion. And right. I think that when you start, you're just figuring it out, and you're doing everything, and like nothing's kind of systematized, and it's just all working. I'd love to know whose job is it and then how do you guys structure what you guys do in the sense of operating the business and the rentals that you guys have, but then also thinking new developments and expanding the business.
That's been the hardest thing by far the hardest thing that we do. It's a little bit of a story. We quickly gained, I don't know, we must have been at about 10 units that we were watching over and we had built and we were in the process of building. And one of the things that we found was not being in business before as business people, we didn't realize how hard it was to find good workers. And so we were constantly like, because we just thought, when you need somebody, you hire somebody and they do their job.
And they do it. They do it how you do it innately.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. What do you
mean? What do you mean? You can't do this perfectly like I do it?
Yeah. Which is unfair. I've sensed like, it's not their business. I can't expect that. But, however, the way that I the way that I explain this is after about 3 or 4 years, we realized we were like an army that had taken over too much territory. Because we stopped one day and we looked back and we're like, oh no, we're never going to be able to keep this up. Like this is going to kill us. If we want to do the cleaning, if we want to do the, marketing and this and that and the other thing, and if we, but we couldn't find good people to work for us. And so currently a thought occurred to me at that moment. I was like, my kids are all real hard workers and they're really conscientious and good at what they do. And I thought, if they were all showing up for work next Monday, we could do this. But they were currently down in California because of their skill to work construction. They were going to do like 500 foundations for this guy. He was just waiting for the permits, but the permits weren't coming through, California being what it is. And and so I stopped. We were actually vacationing down there, seeing some old friends of ours, and we were coming back to Washington, and we stopped in and we said, okay, if you guys would like to come back and go to work for us, we'll pay you a good wage. We'll make sure you're taken care of, and we'll build a company together, and we'll launch out. Now, if you don't want to, that's fine. That's not a problem, but we're going to start selling off some of the assets. We can keep the treehouse and the original house we built and make a very comfortable living. And so he said, just think about it, pray about it, and let us know. And so then we hit the road, and we were traveling back up to Washington here. And I don't know, I think it was within 5 or 6 hours they called. They said, we're coming home. And so that was the first thing, is we finally found some people who'd come to work. Now, it didn't mean we knew what we were doing, but at least we had solid people to work for us. And so that started us on this journey. And then books, we have spent so much money on bad bookkeepers, unbelievable amounts of money on and so that's our biggest problem, is finding competent, helpful people to help guide our business where we don't know, where we're not skilled in. And so that's kind of where we're at right now, is we're starting to learn how to build a team of people that can actually project into the future and keep the vision going. And so we keep making mistakes and learning from them. I think we kind of, maybe in about 2 years, we'll feel like we're able to expand. Because I would like to go down to other places, in the United States, and do what we do here and experience that culture, build places that reflect that, offer the same thing we do at the Northwest. But man, it takes a bit of know-how that we don't currently have and that we're building at the moment to be able to do that. Did I answer your question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We're going a little off script here, but
Sure.
being a pastor for 25 years, Bev, I know that you mentioned a lot of times that you've prayed about your business and prayed about just financial situations improving. I'd love to know how God and religion has played a role in your business.
So the way we
If you're
view
comfortable
human beings.
talking about it, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Totally. Yeah. No, I love it. The way we view human beings is we are these particular entities here on earth that can hear from heaven, translate what God wants, because he's, not a person. He's the spirit, we believe, that created all things. But we believe humans can hear from that like a radio, right? You tune into something, and then we translate that onto earth. And it's literally our little motto when we tell people is we're trying to bring a little bit of heaven on earth. And so
It's beautiful.
he loves nature. God created this, and we love his nature, and the beauty that surrounds us astounds us constantly, and we don't want to be in the face of that. We want to be intermingled with that. And so whenever, that's why we just use natural products like wood, and I guess concrete's not natural, but so to speak. But wherever we can, we're going to look and try to express the beauty that's around us, that's in the ecosystem, if you will, of where we're at. And so we want, because again, in our faith, we realize what work is it's looking at chaos and it's bringing order to that chaos, but not destroying it, right? It's to improve things and to make things more healthy, not less healthy. And so we see ourselves as these servants of this greater spirit that would come in and not clear cut a forest, but actually tree farm, right? Take out the weak trees, let the stronger trees grow, leave a better environment than when we came. And that's one of the reasons why we like the treehouse, is because it didn't go into the ground. We could work with the nature rather than against the nature.
And our kind of our life verse is 1 Cor 10:31, and it's whether you eat or drink or whatever you do,
Do all to
do
the
all
glory.
to the glory of God. And so that has been even, our decision making. I mean, we actually sit there and think, will this bring God glory? Does it show who God is more or less? And that's kind of with our decisions of spending more money than less. We are constantly just trying to figure out, will this glorify God more? Or being cheap, does that glorify God more? And so that is kind of how we've made a lot of our decisions with everything in the business too.
Yeah, and sometimes being cheap does glorify God, right? If you don't
To
have
save
enough,
money.
right, to save money and to be, responsible with your, what you have and stuff, and not go in debt so that you put a burden on the rest of your family and da 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 da.
And I've had to have a lot of faith through all this,
Right.
like our 25 years as being a pastor, and like I said, those 20 years, I didn't complain when he made 3,000 and we had 4 kids, and and not until he said he was going to retire did I finally complain, because I just like, okay, this is what God's given us, I will make it work. And and so I pinched every penny I had, and we had a great life. We didn't get to go on great vacations or go out to eat, but I was a good cook. So
Yeah.
I could make $50 last all week for our food. But
Yeah. I'm not relatively super religious, but I think that I get to the same resolution as you guys, and I do it by thinking, when I'm 80 or 90, what impact am I going to want to have left this planet in this lifetime? And so
Right,
I
yeah.
think about like, for example, before I was doing all this, I worked in videography, and we started growing, and we did a promo video for a company called Vixen, and then we did a company called Playboy. And obviously it was like no nudity stuff, but I had to take a step back and be like, what am I doing?
Oh,
What
yeah.
impact am I having? Like, I'm promoting a industry that I don't like, that I don't think is a net
Right.
positive for society. What am I really doing here? And I had to, like, the money is great, and that's, I think, the issue with all of this, is that the
Yeah.
money is good, and then you look back,
Right.
but you're like, what, is it worth it? Like, is that money worth it? So I had to
Right.
take a step back, and it was a really big reflection point. And I continue, I think, my relationship with God, and I continue my faith, in the sense of, like, I don't think that I'm where I will be in the future Lex, when it comes to religion and
Right.
faith. But where I'm at now is, like, I was able to take a step back and look at, like, the bigger picture, and whether you want
Right.
to call that God or whatever you want to call it, I was
Sure.
able to take a step back and kind of look and say, what impact do I want to have in this lifetime? And then
Right.
let me just kind of focus my untapped potential on creating an impact. And so I think what you were saying is, it aligns with that. It aligns with really thinking about what impact you want to have, and then if you were going to save money, you're saving money so that you're able to impact and expand the business and impact more people. It's like,
Right.
because what you're doing at the end of the day is allowing people to come to your properties and to reconnect with their loved ones or experience things, which is,
Right.
in my opinion, a net positive thing for
Yeah.
society. So
Yeah.
the actual mission of what you're doing, I think, is positive for society. Therefore, however you row the boat to get to impacting more people positively is the grand scheme of what we're doing here. And so I think that's beautiful. I just was curious, because it's something that I'm still maneuvering through
Sure.
in life, is understanding
Yeah.
what role God plays in my life and what role that it was. So I was just, it was a personal inquiry on what it.
Yeah, we are in Washington State, which isn't really. They don't really like us, but because I'm pretty conservative and I'm a Christian, and in the Northwest up here, it's not real popular. However, I want to be able to share with people, and when they come into the environments that we've created, they're immediately disarmed. Right? They don't see me as Hitler and somebody that wants to do this and that. They realize, oh, this is somebody who loves nature. This is somebody who really cares about their surrounding. So all the things that we do are, because it's what we believe, project what our belief system. And so then when people like yourself say, oh, well, how did you get to this place? I can honestly, without, Amwaying them. I don't know if you get that reference, but without trying
It went right over my head. I'm going to be honest with you.
Oh, okay. Amway people, Christians, used to invite people over to have dinner, and then they would try to sell them on this pyramid scheme.
Oh, I gotcha.
That was called Amway. So anyway, but I don't like. It's got to be natural for me. Like if they see what I'm doing and they're interested, I'd love to tell them about it. And it's a much better way than me trying to go out and beat people over the head with, my morality, because they're just frankly not that interested, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But when they come into my environments, they're like, oh, you obviously care about these things and stuff. And so sometimes we get to that.
In our handbooks, we don't put it in people's face, but we try to bring a little heaven on earth.
Right.
In
I
all
love
our
that.
spaces, and that kind of brings out everything we do.
I think that's such a great way, I don't know, to operate in everything, not just religion, not just.
Right. Yeah.
This is something that means something to me. This has gotten me to this point in life. This is what's been successful for me in my life. I'm not saying to do it in yours. All I'm sharing is my experience with it. And if you are interested in doing, or if you need guidance or a pathway, this was a path that helped me. It might help you. And I think that's such a beautiful, beautiful way to introduce someone to anything, whether it's being vegan or it's being a Christian. I think there's anything that you can, and that's where I think that, not to go down a rabbit hole, our society is lacking in, is there's a lot of pushing, weaponizing the other way. If you don't do this, you're then a bad person. It's like let's reverse that. You're not a bad person for not doing something. This has helped one person be better in their life, and we're simply offering another way. So I think that's beautiful, and I love the way that you have presented that.
Yeah, we're just trying to learn how to be a gracious minority.
Beautifully said. Well, is it Hans? I've been pronouncing it Hans this entire time. I hope it is.
You know what? I don't care. Some people know a Hans and they'll call me Hans, and some people know a Hans, they'll call me Hans. And as
Which one
long
do you
as
prefer?
you're
I'm actually never mind. Bev, which way
sure.
does he prefer?
I call them hands.
Okay, Hans it is. Hans and Bev, thank you guys so much for being on the podcast today. It was a phenomenal chat.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I
too.
really enjoyed it. If you ever want to do it again, I mean, we've got so much more, and I love what you're doing, because if the two of us can get this idea rolling, of just experiencing where you're at rather than just staying in a hotel room, we'd be more than happy to help it out.
Yeah, so my whole thing was, the reason, I'll just give you really quickly. I was doing this, right? And it's helped me so much. I will never forget the first time I stayed in an Airstream in the middle of nowhere. I was like, this is awesome. And so I know the feeling that I had. And then I know the feeling that I had when I started giving that experience to other people. And those two feelings, I was like, I can't build enough of these in my lifetime to impact the amount of people that I want to do. I need to go broader, and I need to push the message of educating entrepreneurs how to do this so that they can do it themselves. And so that's the
Yeah,
whole mission
think
of
of a
this
whole
podcast.
world of people doing this.